Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 10th, 2023 regular meeting of the Stoughton School Committee. This meeting is being recorded by SMAC for future broadcasting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda is public comment, and I'm going to call up Pam Carr.
Thank you. Oh, am I on?
Yes, you are.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience. My name is Pam Carr. I am a parent and resident here in Stoughton at 1212 West Street, in case I need to state my name for the record, which I forgot to do at the select board meeting last week. But I am here with some of our marching Black Knights. With me, I have Senior Drum Major Jack Carr, Junior Drum Major Andy Carlson, Guard Captain Sarah Riker, a Guard member Gianna, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name. Curtis, saxophonist Emily Huang, and saxophonist Julie Powers, both members of the senior class. And we are so happy that you have taken the time to have us here tonight. To the esteemed members of the Stoughton School Committee and to Superintendent Mayetta and Assistant Superintendent Ford, the Stoughton Marching Black Knights and parents of performing students would first like to thank you for your cooperation and assistance in getting us to the point where we are now, where we can officially invite you as our VIP guests to the very first U.S. Band's Marching Band Festival ever to be held at Stoughton High School this Saturday, October 21st. Pop Stoughton has been working on this project for nearly 2 years, and we are very excited to have this actually happen. The Marching Black Knights will be performing their 2023 show, Dawn to Dusk, featuring the music of the Beatles, Max Richter, Henry Mancini, and Van Morrison. In addition, you will have the opportunity to see performances by many other competitive bands from all over Eastern Massachusetts. Now, we know some of you have probably seen these Knights during halftime at the football game, but I'm here to tell you, just wait until you see these Knights in competition, because this is where they really shine. Children? Knights.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Detail, hut set, hut.
Hut.
Detail, preset, arms.
1, 2.
Detail, order, arms.
1, 2.
At ease.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, and we really look forward to seeing you on the 21st.
Thank you. Thank you for the
It will not
invitation.
rain, right? It will not rain. If anybody has
you
any
too.
questions for us, or for me, you can stand at the ready. If anybody has any questions about the festival or anything, I can answer them for you. No?
I don't have a question. I just
Okay.
want to make a comment because
Yes.
I've already said it to someone else. Unfortunately, I am traveling for a wedding that weekend
Okay.
in California, so I won't be here. But if this is the first, that means there's more coming, and I promise to make sure to get that calendar clear as much as possible.
Excellent.
So I just wanted to apologize that as the superintendent, I'm not going to be there but because of a wedding that I have to go to. Believe me, I'd rather stay.
There will be a Facebook recording. So.
Yes,
Yes.
we're looking
Yes,
forward to
and
it.
hopefully SMAC will be there too. We will be reaching out to them
And
as well.
Jeffrey Pickett, of course.
Yes.
Yes, actually, yes. Jeffrey Pickett will be there, so you know that there is going to be great coverage of this event.
So my return to Stoughton on opening day, the convocation was with the Black Knights members who could attend and be there. And that brought back really a full circle for me coming back to Stoughton as a former student and someone involved in the community. So I always look forward to watching you guys and listening.
Thank you very much. And I apologize for our tardiness, and we're going to bolt because these kids are actually on the field
Yes.
practicing right now. So I had to pull them away, get them in uniform, and come down. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
We're excited about this.
So are we.
Bye.
So a bit of an unusual public comment, but I think it was worth it. So I'm delighted to be officially invited. All right. Sorry, you have to follow that, Dr. Valletta, but we're going to turn it over for the superintendent update.
I think we have to restructure the superintendent's update after these positive public comments. Just want to announce to the school committee that I have attended the first, most recent Stoughton Local Emergency Planning Committee on the 3rd of October. This is basically how we as a community respond to a situation, i.e. a flood, tornado, loss of electricity for a period of time. Where do people go? How do they get fed? So on and so forth. And so we are going to be part of creating a tabletop exercise, kind of like a walkthrough of how it would work. And that may require also the utilization of one of our schools on a weekend and all that. That's all in the future to plan. But just wanted to make sure that you knew that the schools were involved with that. I just attended the New England Association of School Superintendents meeting in Westport, Rhode Island. The title of it was, "We Cannot Control the Wind, but We Can Direct the Sail." Everything was really around communications, public relations, and the idea of how we try to control the message around what's good for kids, positive the community, and so on and so forth. And also heard from one of my colleagues from Maine who's written a book called The Trust Imperative, which is really about being a trust leader, and how do you make sure that you can extend that not only to your school committee, but to your unions, to your employees, and so on and so forth, and that was great. And then lastly, at that meeting, I'm also on the NESDEC board. We held our regular meeting there because we got a lot of people from New England, and both organizations cover New England. The weather was beautiful. I didn't get to see any of it until after 5 o'clock on Thursday, but that's okay, it was beautiful. I am meeting with PTO and parent leaders on the 12th. One is at 9 in the morning for a coffee hour. The other one is at 6 p.m. These will become regular meetings where I can provide them some direct information. I can take some information back either to you or to my principals about what's happening within our schools and how we can keep that a collaborative effort. And thank you to, I know it's been a long time coming, but thank you to Ms. Husseini and her entire crew working with the town and others. Our Stoughton High School parking lot is finally restriped, numbered, and we can actually see everything. So we did it yesterday on the day off. We will begin the process of getting all of our schools looped into that process so that we're not just doing one school or 5 schools in 1 year or 6. We've got a process going forward because we need all the striping at the other schools as well. So we'll start that process. That's all I have.
Questions for the superintendent, Armando?
I have some question. Probably I'm looking for additional status. One actually came from my daughter, and I'd like to pass that on to you.
Sure, I'd love to take it.
She's interested in knowing the status for the budget for school, for the library. She's under the impression that there is $0 available for paper books for the library, and it would be wonderful to find out if that's the case, because she loves to read, and on future meetings, if you can give us a little bit of status on.
Yes, I'll make sure that we have, take a look at what the budget for, the current budget for FY24 notes for the purchase of library materials.
The second one is, if you can, a status on the scoreboard. I know, obviously, I go by the school and I see the scoreboard there, but I'm curious on whether you can provide a status if there's something that's planned for the back of the scoreboard, because the school looks beautiful except the back of the scoreboard, and I was thinking maybe the Black Knights mural can go there or something like that, instead of being the only blight in the area.
It's a discussion that's been brought up, and I will give you an update when I meet with Ms. Hussein.
Okay. Another update is, if you can, the bus issues, the lateness of buses, or do we have sufficient number of bus drivers? I know there was a problem earlier, but
I'll get you some specifics on that. I will tell you that it's been a lot quieter the last couple of weeks in terms of the turnover, not having people, so on and so forth. Less calls coming in. We still have the issue of lights being a concern at different parts of the day. I'm working with Mark Tisdale on seeing if we can fluctuate those lights, 30 seconds, or I should say 5 seconds there, 10 seconds there, because it's really at that turn right at Town Hall that everything backfires, and then you can't take a left at downtown onto Prospect, and it just causes everything to go back. So I'll get you an update in writing. I'll see if I can get an update sooner than later on those issues and put them in writing and send them to you.
Yeah, I noticed at the high school there's a cross guard, I believe.
Crossing guard?
And on the street as we go into the parking lot, and she does a wonderful job of directing traffic. She really gets the traffic moving along, and she has a pier on the other side.
Yep.
Does a wonderful job doing that. I was wondering maybe that's beyond the school, but perhaps with Mark and work into helping the flow, because programming something is you set it and hopefully it works, but a human might be
Yes.
able to direct
And as you know,
traffic
at
better.
some parts of town, I'm sorry to interrupt, at some parts of town, we've also put in the crossing lights, which allows for people to cross, and you don't have to have anyone here like we do here at the library corner. So part of the issues with crossing guards, from my experience, is that they are controlling flow out of traffic coming out of a school building, but really out in the street, they're not a traffic officer, if
Right.
you will. So that's always the catch-22, is where can you put them to get that? But I'll definitely bring it up to both the town and police department, and trying to find original ways and unique ways to get stuff moving. Happy to do so.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, moving on to our Student Advisory Council, our committee representative. Tonight we have Max Pokraka. Is that who you say? If you have any information for us or updates for us? Yes, make sure it's green.
All right, so basically, right now we're just focusing on homecoming. As you know, like, we have our homecoming football game this Friday, and then the homecoming dance on Saturday. So right now it's just like selling tickets, getting everything set up, prepared, and everything.
All right. Well, we wish everybody good luck at homecoming, and hope everyone has an enjoyable dance on Saturday.
Do we know who would win homecoming? Do you know?
I think it's Mansfield.
Okay. I have the homecoming, but I didn't put the name of the team on my calendar.
I don't think I have it. All right. Thank you, Max. All right, moving on to new business. The first item on our agenda is the POPs custodial fee waiver request. Now, we can waive a facilities fee, but per the contract, we are not able to waive custodial fees for outside organizations like this, and we have some more information on that. Where did it go? I know we looked at this and we're trying to figure out, what they're paying for this, and, unfortunately, our hands are kind of tied by the way the contract is worded. Dr. Bayed, I know you looked into this.
Yeah, thank you so much. And first of all, this is supporting our students and so on. We do have very strict guidelines in how we use it. Basically, it comes down to that you can waive whatever you want, but your funding source is the key. And so your funding source is, we will not charge you for the facility, and we'll absorb that, but for the custodian, we will not absorb that. It needs to come from who's ever utilizing the buildings. Our breakdown for the U.S. Band's Marching Band Festival on the 21st is, as you see in the handout that I provided you at the beginning, should have been at the table with you at the beginning of the meeting, runs with custodians that are running, for example, $38 an hour, running a 12-hour shift, then a 6-hour shift, then another 6.5, and another 6.5, and then the O'Donnell Middle School for 6.5. So your total estimated is $1,425 that, in this particular case, POPs has to take out of the money that they make to pay the schools. Kind of sounds like a little interesting concept. It happens all the time, by the way. The other interesting part, and trying to do some homework, is I tried to take a look at, I understand why this is in place, but I also tried to look at should this be the future? And I'll give you an example. We had fees in the district. We now have it under the operational budget. Should we be taking a look at some of our organizations, boosters, and saying, if you're using our facility, we will absorb 50% of the cost, 25% of the cost, something that gives them, because in this particular case, this POPs organization, and I know other organizations, are fully funding our kids getting onto buses to go travel somewhere else for a competition, or those types of things. And if you're having a Friday night football game, which I fully endorse and support, those students in their sport are no longer being charged, which is a great thing, but also everything to do with the facilities, the fundraising. It's just the football boosters and the POPs boosters split the concession. That's how I was told this morning by Principal Miller. But there's no custodial cost, there's no police cost, there's nothing, because they're using that facility. So the question going forward, and unfortunately I'm not sure a whole lot can be done for this year, is should that be the way we maintain this for this type of curriculum, activity, and experience? Or do we not? We keep it separate. And that's a decision that the committee, I've mentioned to the chair earlier that I am willing to take the lead on collecting best practices from other districts to see as the better way for us to do this going forward, and presenting that to the full committee for a review, and potentially putting something in place down the road. I have a really hard time, this is a philosophical reason, I have a really hard time having fundraising groups have to spend money on what's good for kids. Their money should go, that fundraising should go directly to the students and not to pay. And I know that is very different from the history of the district. I am not questioning why it was done. I sat in your seat when this was done. But I think it's time to have a real discussion about it. And it is, I mean, these students are in music during the day. They are part of our music program. It is part of curriculum instruction. And it's a matter of how do we see it and try to figure it out. So I hope to be able to get the committee to at least begin those important discussions, and hopefully, especially when we have an event that is potentially going to be coming and showcasing our district, and potentially winning awards, which is what we do every time we go somewhere else. So now we get to potentially win them at home. Lastly, I know this has been a long time standing. Just because it's been happening for a long time shouldn't mean we shouldn't look at to change it to the better. So.
Question, Chris?
Actually, comment
Okay.
and disclosure. So first of all, I would like to say I'm the project manager in charge of coordinating this event, so any vote or discussion I would abstain from. But I would like to provide some context. Bringing the competition to Stoughton has been something that they've been actively trying to do for, I believe, 20-plus years. We've never been able to host here because we didn't have the facility. So now that we have the facility, we did a proof of concept with Bridgewater Raynham, where we co-hosted with them, and then decided it was feasible for us to actually run it here. The costs for these shows, we have to pay U.S. bands, I think it's in the neighborhood of $3,500, I don't remember
Just
the
for the-
exact figure,
yep.
just to have the privilege of putting their name on it. So, and then there's police detail, there's a nurse first aid. There are a lot of other things that we do to make sure that it is a safe and enjoyable event for all. It is very feasible that this event would not be a fundraiser at all. We would end up being in the red simply because of some of these fees. So that I believe was the instigation for approaching the school committee and the superintendent, but understand the current policy. But I just wanted to provide that, and I applaud the superintendent's desire to look at equity across student-facing organizations and programs. The one thing I would also like to finish with is that the funds for this ensure equitable access to the program. Uniforms have zero cost to students. An instrument will be provided to a student if they want it, and sometimes they will even provide for independent lessons and tutoring. So any student in Stoughton can participate in the music program if they want to. And that is because it is funded through activities like this.
Just to add, Madam Chair, if I may real quickly, we also have to charge for a nurse, which is not underneath there, and we also have to charge, and they also receive a police detail, police officers that'll be there. And as somebody who does run a I don't run it, I have been the president and then the leader of a nonprofit organization, I know that we have to have police officers there in today's day and age. We don't have the choice for the purposes of safety, but there is a cost that comes with that is either absorbed by increasing prices or by third parties making donations. Is what it is. So it's I'm at your will to do some homework and get some stuff back to you.
Yeah, I think the.
It won't be before this one, but
Right.
hopefully we can really look underneath and say, what should we be doing about this?
All right, so unfortunately, we do have to, or fortunately or unfortunately, we have to make a motion about this. Do I have a motion on the table for the POPs custodial fee waivers request?
So moved.
Or what's your motion, to waive or to deny this request?
Motion is to waive.
To waive the fees? All right, that motion was made by Armando. Is there a second?
Sorry, can I just clarify? Because of the contract, we're not able to waive the fees.
We're not able to waive the fees.
Okay, so,
We can have two motions on the table.
okay.
I just need a second is there a second for the waiving? What Chris would abstain. Second for we don't have to vote. We can put it on the table. There's just a motion. Yes.
Can we go vote against the contract, I guess? That's the question.
And the question is, where's the money going to come from?
Yes.
Right.
So the issue is the contract are the employees who get paid. The money source is the question. Your policy currently says that must be absorbed by the rental organization / you can do whatever you want. You're the school committee. Now, you open up Pandora's box without going through a process of making this difficult decision. I would not support you doing that at this time, because that will put you in a circumstance of opening ourselves to all kinds of, what we want to do is our due diligence on who may get this benefit. For example, you created a signage policy after a very critical time period. That signage period allows for us to allow Stoyak to place it out there for 3 weeks through a process. We want to do the same thing here. We want to really say, and one of the notations in that policy is tied to curriculum instruction, which I would argue this is, but discussion we can have later.
You really can't.
Not at this time.
Yeah.
So you can waive the fee for the facility as a vote. You need to vote against, unfortunately, the payment of per your contract, per your policy.
So that we rescind that motion.
All right, so have we officially waived the facilities fee for them?
You have not.
We have not. All right.
Well, let me rephrase that. I believe that is in your policy.
That's in the policy.
Your policy does not require, let me reread it. It says, last paragraph, will automatically be waived from paying the facility grounds fees only. So that's in your policy. You do not need to take it.
We don't need that. So the motion would then be to deny the custodial fees waiver request. Sorry, to deny the custodial fees request. Is there a motion to do that?
Deny the payment of custodial fees. That's correct.
Or the waiving of custodial fees?
It's either one or the other. You're denying the waiving of custodial fees. That's what the language should be.
Yes. Okay, denying the waiving of custodial fees. So is there a motion to deny the waiving of custodial fees?
So moved.
All right, so that was made by Lindsay. A second? Second. All right, all right, the motion has been moved and seconded. Vote, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, abstain. So the motion is carried 4-0 with Chris abstaining.
And
So this is something we're going to look into. And if anybody who's listening or watching, happens to have $1,425 that they would love to donate to the POPs program to cover the custodial fees, that would be amazing. So POPs, great organization.
There are sponsorship opportunities available.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
great.
So, all right. I know, sometimes this job is hard. All right. Moving on to a special education program update. We have Mr. Edward Clark, a special education director for the Stoughton Public Schools, here to give us an update. I believe we have paperwork for that.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
In your packet, I provided basically the results of the It's called Tier Focus Monitoring. It's basically the Department of Ed's audit of the special education department. They're required to do that every 5 years, and they look at specific elements in terms of procedure, process, and compliance. Although it's never a good thing to be not in complete compliance, the district has been cited as being partially compliant in the 6 areas that I provided to you, and this actually comes right from the report that they sent out in August of the specific areas and the reason for the partial compliance labels that were given to us. Each of these individual elements can be categorized into one or another category. It's either timeline compliance or paperwork compliance. Personally, I see these as being, I don't want to say quick and easy fixes, but something that we'll be able to remedy very, very quickly. I've developed a corrective action plan, which was submitted to the department beginning of last week, with a couple of deadlines, one being, I think it's November 27th, and the other being March, sometime in the middle of March as well. Just progress updates. The easiest way to, I guess, explain how this is going to be corrected is with an increase of oversight. I've been reading every single IEP that the district has produced so far this year, and first and foremost, I'm actually very pleased with the contents of the IEPs. The goals and objectives that our staff are writing for children are measurable, attainable, but also aggressive as well. And that's what you want to see. You don't want to see a program laid out that we know every kid is going to reach without pushing them a little bit. We want that struggle time in order to have students progress to the point where we want to make them more independent learners. I tried to be as less wordy as possible when I put this summary together. I don't know if anybody has any questions in regard to the clarity of this or anything specific. Yes, sir.
Number 14, I was kind of surprised in that one, review and revise, particularly the revise of the individual education plan. Kind of caught me by surprise that wasn't done or not in compliance.
What they do is they basically pull records across the district and look for these compliance elements. Basically means that every year we've got to sit down at least annually to review the contents of an IEP and update them accordingly. One or more of the files that they pulled, whether it be from 2022-23 or in the past, showed that annual meeting occurred more than a year's time. They didn't go into the specifics of the meeting was scheduled and had to be postponed or what the reason was, but some of the examples that they pulled did show that timeline was missed. So what we have done in the central department is we've created a grid basically of all of these timeline factors. If a parent writes a letter requesting their child be evaluated, we have to do that within 45 school days. What's the date there? In 10 school days after that date, we've got to produce and send out an IEP. What's the date there? And it's a template that we're going to be providing to staff moving forward so they can keep track of their own to make sure that these timelines aren't missed moving forward.
It's just the timeline that was missed, not
Yes.
the complete revision.
The revision is just when you sit down to look at an IEP on an annual basis, you are either revising goals to make them more challenging moving forward or drafting new goals. And that's what they meant by revision.
Yeah, but it was a miss. A child didn't go 2 years on the same.
No. It went beyond 364 days.
They missed the deadline.
Yes.
Easy question.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So first of all, thank you. I think the update is really helpful. Kudos to you for reading every IEP. That's a big undertaking.
Takes a little while.
Yeah, but it's a really solid attention to detail. I had a question about number 42. It's when you characterize it as sort of like either a timeline thing or a paperwork thing. How does that one fit in there?
It's a paperwork thing.
Okay.
Obviously, you can see by the description is that there are specific ratios and staff to student ratios within early childhood programs. Based on the number of children who come to us and are found eligible. Sometimes our programs become more populated than that the ratio allows. I categorize it as a paperwork issue because there is a waiver process that you can file through DESE saying due to unforeseen circumstances and more children than we anticipated being found eligible, our ratios are out of compliance, and they can give you a waiver for the remainder of the year if you give a detailed report of how are you going to resolve this to make sure it doesn't happen moving forward.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Did you say that they do this review annually? How frequently is it performed?
This is done every 5 years,
Every
but they
5
also
years.
do a mid-cycle. So it's really every 2.5 years now that the state is going to come in and take a look at this. And that's every school district, whether it be town or regional within the state, so.
And for the corrective actions that you've laid out here, increased oversight, staff trainings, and development of procedures, is there a timeline for achieving these
They give a year,
a year?
but as I said, these are things I already have in motion, and they'll be corrected long before then.
Oh, okay.
I think the second progress report date, again, is sometime in March, and I'm planning to have all this completely compliant by March.
Okay.
So I just want to get an understanding of how this flows.
Mhm.
The corrective, you provided a document with corrective action.
Correct.
And then what happens to that document?
It gets submitted to the state along with the evidence of, whether some trainings need to be done. As I read through IEPs, just making sure that I'm documenting that oversight. Usually they say, pull a sample of 15 over, a month and show compliance. That's a record that I keep, running consistently as I read through them. And submit updates along with the supporting documentation until the state is satisfied that we have gotten back to a point where we're completely compliant on all
And
this.
how long does that process take to the state to tell you you're in compliance, it's good, everything's proceeding?
It depends on how busy they are. Again, I'll submit my progress reports, and it's usually, I want to say, in my experience, it's no more than 3 weeks to a month, but before they get back to us and say, it switches from red to green, on the screen. So, and these are updates I can continue to provide you throughout the year just to show you the progress we're making. Making. Okay.
Kristen?
Yeah. Hi, thank you for this. I have two questions. One, out of curiosity, partially compliant, I imagine compliant. Is there a not compliant in any way whatsoever category?
Yeah.
Okay, so this, which would be a pretty low bar, I imagine,
Yeah.
not doing this at all.
No, exactly.
Do you have a sense of the district's trends in this? What does this look like in the past? Are we increasing our compliance in general, or did we take a couple steps back?
It's a difficult question to answer because when the state does these audits, for lack of a better term, they usually focus on different elements every 5 years. It's not uncommon to be found, partially compliant in a couple, especially as things, evolve and change as new policies come into place. If your paperwork the state hasn't caught up with, or
Right.
vice versa. I mean, 6 areas is pretty, I want to say, I hate to use the word average in my line of work. But being partially, compliant in a couple of areas is a trend that you consistently see, just because of honestly, the massive amount of paperwork and documentation that's required with special education. In a district this size, making sure that all staff know the process and the procedures, what needs to be submitted. It's when you have a team meeting, you have to, as I said, get that IEP in the mail within 10 school days. If it comes to the office and I see something that's, not right, I have two choices. Either I can correct it or I can send it back as a teachable moment. What I am begun to do is I am making the corrections in the office and adding it to a list, which will be oh, by the way, thanks for all the hard work. Here are some things to keep your eye on moving forward. And just to make sure that those aren't trends, as we move throughout the year. So.
That'll help provide some interesting data points as well.
Absolutely.
When we think about internal efficiencies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind my jumping in, I've been doing these for 15 years. So I do federal grants and civil rights. Dr. Quealy does ELE, and Mr. Clark this year did special education. The biggest, I don't think we've ever had a non-compliant citing on any of these reviews. And it used to be a 5-year review. Now it's broken up, so we split it actually all in half, and we do it every 3 years. Generally, what we see is changes in expectations from the Department of Education and regulations, which haven't been promulgated down to us. So we're really, what they're looking for changes, and we're just making adjustments on the fly. Or I think a great example is just missing a timeline. They can pull 100 files, and if we had one family delay, like a meeting, and it goes over the timeline, we're going to get a partial on that. I think this was the best we've ever had. I mean, you just had a fraction. I mean, one year I think we had maybe 10. Yeah. I mean, for ELE we had 3, and one of those was simply looking at teacher licensure, which isn't something we would normally review with regard to Shelton English immersion endorsements. And for civil rights and for federal grants, we didn't have any. So they were perfect. And, historically, we've been doing better and better. And really the things that catch us are timeline things, which sometimes are out of our control, and really a change in expectation at the Department of Education that we don't expect to see in the review. And that's also one of the ways they bring us up to speed and force us to take another look through whatever the current lens is. And, a regulation can change, and we wouldn't understand the ripple through the paperwork or ripple in the expectation for accountability from the Department of Ed. And this isn't really necessarily saying you're doing a good job or you're doing a bad job. It's letting us know what their current expectations are so we have an ability to focus on it and bring it forward. And I thought this was the best review we've ever had this past TFM.
I think a good example of some the factors that sometimes are out of our control is if you look at criterion 17. Evaluating a child, having a meeting, determining eligibility, producing an IEP and getting it home to the parent, it can be a laborious, time-consuming process. If we have a parent who sends us a letter requesting an evaluation and the child turns 3 in less than a month, there isn't enough time to do all that work. So we got dinged on that. So sometimes the expectations can't be met, but we understand we have processes in place to make sure we're doing it as efficient as possible. But sometimes things are out of our control.
And I'll just give an example. When we do civil rights, there's civil rights criterion 24 and 25 that have to do with curricular review and program reviews. And we know what they expect because we've been through these before, and we've had countless conversations with the Department of Education and PQA that runs the TFMs. And sometimes changing the person that's evaluating it changes the expectation with them. But for those 2 particular items, whereas we've built in things throughout our whole district to demonstrate compliance, it's not even a trivial thing. A lot of school districts will say, how do you even demonstrate compliance? How do you even meet the expectations? Because it's so convoluted and abstract, and sometimes it just comes down to the person on the other end that's conducting a review. What are they looking for? And something we've had it happen with those 2 in the past, whereas we have written expectations provided for us that we've met, and we get a new rating agent, and they have a different set of expectations that you have to work through in the process. So it's not a cut and dry thing. It's not straightforward always. Sometimes it's just trying to figure out changes in expectations or even what the rating agent is looking for to allow you to demonstrate compliance to the expectation.
I guess it would indicate to me that being partially in compliance was understood by Stoughton School because you missed the deadline. Right. I guess when that occurs or when we know the missed deadline, is it something that you can self-report and pretty much say, we've missed that deadline, we're going to fix it, as opposed to having them come and say, you've missed it?
As part of the mid-cycle review, there is a self-assessment period where, again, internal oversight on all of these, beyond the progress reporting that I'm going to be doing, has to be ongoing. So when it comes to that mid-cycle review, the self-assessment portion will focus on these, as well as any other areas that they're going to indicate that they're going to be looking at.
I worked for a bank for a little while, And one of the things that the bank did to make sure they were always complying with the laws is they would have an audit. I don't know if that's possible here, to see that work in compliance more frequently than every 3 years, and not get something like this?
So there are different things that we have built into our school district. And now I'll speak from the civil rights component. In our school and district improvement planning process, we actually benchmark specific items in a number of different categories that correspond with expectations that the state has in the review process. And we do that so that you're reviewed because they're showing you what they're looking for, because it's best practice. It's what the expectation is that you do annually and what you do in servicing kids and in implementing your program. And in like under civil rights, we actually benchmark in all the expectations in other documents and processes and procedures, so that every year when a principal is doing like their school improvement plan, they'll do different reviews. They'll do discipline reviews, they'll do curricular reviews, and they'll do audits in different areas as part of the normal process, all of which are things that we are then accountable for through the TFM, the Tiered Focus Monitoring Review. So we've got things built in all over the place. What tends to trip us up, though, is the little things like you were talking about, or when the expectation changes and nobody tells us. That's kind of when it all comes about. Now, when we submit our self-assessment, so we'll go through, there's two parts of this. There's a self-assessment. There's one the department actually may choose to come on site, or may say, submit documentation. There's different ways of doing it. But when we do the self-assessment, we go through the whole TFM. So we'll look at all the different areas. You catalog evidence. You review your whole process. You submit it all to them. And then they take a look at it. And, maybe they're going to come out and take a closer look. Maybe they're going to ask you follow-up questions. But it's a whole huge elongated process. But the position of this district has always been benchmark those expectations and what you do every year, so there's no surprises when the state comes down and audits. And we've been very successful in that. We've never had a non-compliance. And really it's just little things. When they pull the files, they may find something. They could pull 100 files and find one thing in one file, and that's going to get you partial. And if we have hundreds of kids on IEPs, we have hundreds of kids in our ELE program. Sometimes, like this year, what caught us for a surprise for ELE is they were pulling the endorsement, the SCI endorsement. They've never pulled that before. And in fact, they stopped reporting it to us. They used to report it to me, and I would do the follow-up with the teachers. We haven't got a report from them in years. Yet all of a sudden this year, you have teachers that are required to have this, and who knew? Now, we can follow up on that after the fact. We can provide the training. We can do all that. But, we still got a partial, even though we're going to have it remedied in 6 months by providing a course. And you didn't know that was still our responsibility. And that, in fact, is a licensure responsibility, which I would argue is not ours. And yet, here we are.
One last question. Do they just show up and say, we're going to do this audit, or
There's two cohorts. There's an A and B cohort. And when they took the initial CPR, which used to be a coordinated program review, now it's tiered focus monitoring, they split it in half. And they didn't really split it because they've actually been adding things along the way. So each of the two cohorts is actually getting bigger and bigger every year. But they tell you exactly what they want. They tell you when they're coming. 6 months out, they'll send you an email. There's a training they provide leading up into it so that you can meet with your, whoever it is, the state's assigning from PQA that's going to conduct your audit. You're trained. You know what the expectations are. You don't always know what they're looking for. And you don't always know how the person conducting your audit is going to interpret the materials you submit. You never know.
Yep.
Part of the self-assessment process is if we do our own internal audit and, say I found some non-compliance in meeting the timelines, and I submit the self-assessment stating, here's what we found, here's what we're going to start working on, we're still going to be found partial compliant.
Okay.
So.
I guess I have one more question. on the nobody tells us, is it possible to be proactive and ask them? What are the changes? What's coming down the pike?
Of course. And that's why you have the meeting well in advance. And they publish the criteria. You can go and look at the criteria. But sometimes it comes down to the person that's rating you has an expectation for what they're looking for. Sometimes you meet it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get a partial, and you're demonstrating compliance to that expectation. which I can tell you, I've had different people year to year. And what I had in writing as an expectation for one person to demonstrate compliance didn't meet the expectation of the next reviewer. And I appreciate both our positions. We absolutely can move in and meet their expectations as well. And sometimes it's just tweaking what you do. Sometimes it's making a little adjustment. I've been fortunate, I haven't been cited for those things because I'm like, all right, this is my interpretation. You know, we have something, we'll make this minor adjustment. But we got all that done before we were submitting the paperwork. And you really have to just ask a million questions. But it's you know, a partial is not bad.
Okay.
It just means that we're going through the process of understanding what they're looking for from us. And, you know, it's not an uncommon thing. These are all public reports, by the way. So you can look at what we're doing now, and you go back and what we've done in the past.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I really appreciate the work that's been done in this, and I know what I've heard from parents has been a lot of timeline and paperwork. That's been where the parents complain. So it's nice to know that you know their complaints line up with that, and that you have the plan in place. And I look forward to hearing the updates. So,
Can I end with a couple of positives?
yes,
Real quick?
Yes, please, please. We love hearing them.
2 weeks ago on Tuesday, we had the first Special Ed Parent Advisory Council. It'll never happen again that it conflicts with a school committee meeting, so I apologize for that. But I was very pleased with the turnout. We had over 30 parents attend, both in person and virtually. Had a lot of vibrant discussions. I answered a lot of questions, and I had some follow-up conversations with parents. And I'm just very, very excited about the leadership of the CPAC this year and what they have planned moving forward. Monday is the annual Parents' Rights Meeting, which they'll be doing virtually, with a representative from, sorry, I lost my train of thought. They're bringing in a presenter to do that. Flyers will be going out on their website and also the district website over the next couple days. And lastly, if you haven't had a chance, and if you do have a chance moving forward, take in one of the unified basketball games up at Stoughton High School. It's new this year. It's a program kind of like Best Buddies, where some of our students are paired with peer models, mentors, partners, if you will. And there are 7 or 8 surrounding towns which also have unified basketball teams. The first game was last Thursday. Great audience attendance. Kids were excited. Members of our marching band were there. Members of our cheerleading squads were there to cheer them on. And it's a great take. So thank you for your
Could
time.
I add something to that? I'd just like to thank Liz Lonergan,
Yes, I'm sorry.
who's been trying to get this off the ground for years, and Robin Ireland, who's athletic director, that actually made it happen for it. It's just been a long time coming, and it was a spectacular event.
Yeah.
And I would encourage anyone to show up for the next one and support those kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the quarterly financial report presentation. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Heidi Perkins, the Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations.
In your packet was the quarterly financial report for the period ending end of first quarter in September. As usual, this time, I hope that's picking up. This time of year, there's not really a lot to report. We've only been in school for a few weeks, so the typical beginning of the year ordering and encumbering is underway. And I just put in there for an extra context that the ESSER funding, as we all know, is ending at the end of this school year, essentially. And we expect that to be fully expended, of course. And the HVAC installations at 1 or 2 of our elementary schools will be taking the majority of what's in that grant. The salaries, as you've probably heard and been aware, we've had a lot of hiring this year, which for the public is not new positions. It's filling open positions, as we always have turnover. A lot of times, as mentioned in the memo, we may see some savings as senior people retire out and younger staff come in, or newly minted people come in. And we've just really seen quite a mix this year of not just retirees, people that are moving on, whether there's opportunities closer to them for a shorter commute or whatever it may be, they're moving, all sorts of things. But we've had some experienced people coming in that more experienced people that we've been able to hire, which is great for the district. But in the end, we're not really seeing any turnover savings this year because it's been pretty much a wash, at least to date. So majority of the salaries have been encumbered, but as we all know, the Unity Educators contract is still, yet to be settled. So we can't say how that will look until that contract settles and we make the adjustments to the wages for this year. And then, of course, there's always, salaries that are not showing as encumbered. They're pay-as-you-go, substitutes, interpreters, coaches, et cetera. The coaches' stipends won't go in until each season comes up. Excuse me, we determine who was actually hired. There's no way to encumber that unless you have it attached to a name and the person's pay card. So that's essentially where we are on that. And I also wanted to point out that, as mentioned in the memo, based on some of those pressure points that are yet to be settled, particularly the teacher's contract, that just has a lot of staff in it, the majority of our staff, of course, as everyone knows. So that will have a larger impact than one of the smaller units may have when we settle. Well, we do anticipate we may use some or all of our current year circuit breaker revenue to supplement the operating budget in '24. And we also expect that we will fully expend the salary and expense budgets this year as things look right now. It is very early, however. So, and on the second page, there's the breakdown in the cost centers, as you can see where we are right now. And I don't have anything else specific because it is so early in the year. We really don't get to, too much more specifics of how the year end will look until after the mid-year break when we really see how things are flushing out.
Chris and Armando, do you understand what the ESSER grants are?
Is that specific to COVID?
Yes.
Armando, you? Yeah. Okay, all right, just making sure. Since we were talking about making sure that I don't run through all these acronyms without some explanation. Any questions or comments for Ms. Perkins? Yes.
Yeah. Do you mind helping me understand the first line, the administrative line, where it has looks like a negative available balance? Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yes, right. There could be a number of things that is. I mean, there are placeholders, for instance, let's just say that staff have been, and administration, by the way, is curriculum and a lot of things. Mandates that we have, unemployment insurance, there's a lot of things that go into that line. So that is payroll, wages, and expenses. And, sometimes at different points in the year, you have things encumbered that will be released. So this isn't always there. Additionally, depending on the day we run the report, the way the Munis system works is if a payroll is in flux, it can be counted and expended and encumbered at the same time until it posts by the town. So that's always the problem of running a report in Munis, and there is no way to get around that. So, and I'd have to look, like if we ran it 2 days later, might that have changed because of the posting? That actually happens a little bit in AP too, but more in payroll. So I don't have it in front of me to get into, the lines, whatever, but it's not unusual to have one cost center, even at the end of the year, be in the negative and one in the positive. I'm not one that usually does budget amendments because for me, that's closing the door after the horses left the barn. You don't really get any value out of that to see what you really, things that came up, you planned on spending X in technology, something came up like COVID, you spent a lot more money in technology. It's valuable to go back and see that. Otherwise, it just looks like we could have foretold the pandemic. And, if you do a budget amendment, it just looks like you came in exactly perfect all the time. There's no value in that. So you will see things fluctuate under and over. And other programs, at the end of the year may have a positive number. And as long as the bottom line comes out, that's not unusual.
Okay. Thank you.
I
I
hope that
appreciate
helps.
that.
I'll have more detailed information after we get everything posted in and the contract settled and all of that.
Okay. Basically, I just wanted to know, is that like a problem or a red flag? And it
No.
sounds like
Nope,
no.
it's
okay.
not.
Thank
Not
you.
at
I
all.
really appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments? I mean, I know you. All right. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Ms. Perkins. So, all right. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent goals, and we will need to approve these. Dr. Beta.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the members of the committee. As you see, I've provided to you, working off of the big picture, trying to get into some more details of the specifics. If you go to page 2, you begin really what we're looking at is in terms of student learning goals. To be quite honest, the chair and I had further conversations about this being a priority area, because I've been talking a lot about creating a literacy goal for the district. So as you can see, this is pretty significantly detailed. I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Ford, for really helping to lingo this out, if you will. He's very good at it, and that's the reason why I think we get really good grants, for the record, because he knows the lingo, he knows where to put it. But it also establishes some timelines that I'll be reporting back to you on a regular basis. Most of it will be memo form. I'll just say, hey, update on student goal for December according to the plan. I'm giving it to you. Might add some information in terms of a link to something that I've been working on, or a portfolio of materials that go with all of that. So my job is to try to give you that stuff, hopefully electronically, for the record, because I don't want to burn down any more trees than we need to. But really, this goal is an opportunity for us to have a reading goal in place of 90% of all students by the end of 3rd grade. The research, which I'll make sure is part of the reporting back, is very clear that when you get students at reading at grade level by the end of grade 3, the success of that over time is significantly more than with students with challenges. This will also be driven by the leadership team. Those administrators that will be part of this, K to 5, include our principals, include curriculum folks, special ed will be involved, and ELL as well. And the idea here is that we're all looking at this and what does it mean in Stoughton in terms of our goals. So, for example, what might come out of this, we're already, as you can see on page 3, it says October on the second one down, send district team for training on the student-focused coaching model. That actually begins this weekend. We have 8 of us. I'm part of the team. I'm sending this as a very clear message to the administrative team that when we are doing learning walks within our schools, that we have calibrated as 2 administrators or 3 administrators what we're looking for in a teaching and learning that's taking place in our buildings. And again, this will be very driven around the idea that, and an area of concern that has come up in the district is that too many administrators see things, quote, differently. So this allows for us to really target on that as well. And I want to thank Jonathan for really searching to get this support for us. Then you'll also see that I'll be planning on some funding sources around this. It may be early on for FY25, just looking for some stipend money to motivate some folks to be involved in the plan development, because we do want to have teachers as part of our planning process. And then finally, looking at updating things like our curriculum pages, making sure that we're doing this clearly and articulating it, and where are the speed bumps? What's our data showing from our star reading, for example? Some of you have probably heard, or I know at least one of you has heard from our parents getting the early literacy screener and getting some information that they just didn't really know about, and now they have a concern about where is their kid in terms of, we want to provide some training to our parents around our star reading and math that we give to students in this district, but we want our parents more engaged. They have access, by the way, to that. The question is, what am I looking at? What does it really mean? And so we want to provide some of that. We're going to have to do that in multilingual as well. And the end goal is for me to report back to you the big picture with details. So we've studied this, we've looked at it, we've focused on it. What does it mean and how do we get there? So the goal is by 2025, we'll be doing all kinds of band-aiding at the same time. We're just not waiting for a plan. But the plan is going to have potential budgetary discussions that we need to have if we decide that we're changing our literacy and what we do, if we decide we want more coaches, if we decide we want more literacy specialists. All of those will have impact on the budget, as well as professional development. As you know, our professional development are half days, so we're going to have to probably at some point really concentrate our PD on literacy K to 5 and expectations and how we're doing it from building to building. On page 6, we get to our professional practice goal. I have changed this purposely from what was originally my practice was to give you an entry plan. I am still going to give you an entry plan as a separate report. Okay? Just want you to know that because I'm already working on some of this stuff. So my entry plan is basically how do I see the district in my first 90 days of working with teachers and staff and so on and so forth. And I've scheduled some time in October and November to be in the schools just for that. And those notices have gone out, as well as the coffee hours that I'm doing with the PTOs, as well as coffee hours that I'm going to be doing with families, and those will also be available virtually. So we'll be doing all of those, and then I'll report back. This goal really is really taking a look at how do we really, by 25, really take a look at looking at our data and what it means. Our data currently is in multiple places. We have good data. It's in multiple places. Our staff has to go to multiple places to get it, right? There's one group of students, now 2 in every district, where there's always, actually really one, that you can find data on. Special education. Every single one of those students, we have data on. We have specific detailed data done by, through people that are trained in assessment. With the general education population, if you will, that is not as much. We have to try to make that look a certain way. So our STAR data, our MCAS, our other teacher assessments, our grades, our attendance becomes important. We actually just had a meeting about that with our elementary folks, and we just had our secondary principals go to a workshop presented by another public school on improving student attendance, so we'll be coming full circle with that with you as well. But really here, it's driven around how can we really improve student learning by looking at every single kid in our schools as that individual, and then collectively a subgroup, and then collectively how's the building doing. And you can see that from some of our MCAS data that I'm sure is going to be reported out to you via the principals in the next few weeks in terms of how certain schools, one of them was noted as a school of distinction because of how it did the Hanson School that I announced to you folks in the community. So we are currently already taking a look at a platform called EduClimber, where everything would be in there and available. So we're utilizing that as a way to say, is this the best platform? Of course, then we have to get everybody trained. How do we use it? When do we use it? When is the best time to report out to parents? So it's not just about here's your child's grade, because everybody understands that. It's what are all the other things that are potentially impacting a student's grade. And of course, that will also require to take a look at some professional development for staff. Time is the biggest one here. Time is going to be our biggest enemy to fight, just because we get pulled in different directions all the time. And then the last one, the district improvement goal, goes back to that big encompassing goal of reviewing all of the departments, all of us in those 6 core areas of leadership and governance, curriculum instruction, assessment, HR and PD, student support, and financial and asset management. And that is really a total review. We'll be utilizing both the conditions of school effectiveness that I provided you, and then the Mass Department of Elementary Secondary Education standards and indicators. And that will come to you on a report that is very detailed and specific, and it really will talk about what are our opportunities. We know we have weaknesses, we have strengths. We have to always worry about the threat, and the threat usually in public education is finance. And then and time. Those are usually the two, and then this will potentially lead, because the timing will be perfect, to the next triennial plan, because that plan will be coming out in 2025. So this will lead to us utilizing our next 3-year plan of the triennial plan by saying, okay, we hit the IEP, we're really doing well with EL, we've implemented SEL with a lot of work, and now these are the next things. Guess what? SEL still isn't there. It still needs to be in the plan, right? Because it's never done. I mean, plans in education are all about taking a look at where we want to be. And everything will be there in terms of the specifics. I'm really wanting to make sure that our human resources for staff is being supported, that our student supports are there, and if we do that, that will mean that curriculum instruction is flowing in the right direction, because that will lead to good scores overall. And again, if we don't have a goal, we have nothing. If we have a goal and we don't get there, we have the opportunity to revise, redo, recalculate, replan, and implement.
Thank you. I open the floor to you for questions, comments. Lindsay? No questions. Armando?
What are we going to see as the delta when, at the end of the year, or
In terms of,
of this?
so you'll get an update from me on a regular basis, and then you'll get a June report that says all of these things have to have been done by June, this coming June.
What's the regular basis, monthly, or?
I would say probably monthly. It depends on if you want me to do it during a monthly meeting, which, to be quite honest, I would prefer to just send it to you as a report, and then we can always put it under the agenda for more information. Or any other way that you would like to see it. The way I've typically have worked is the way you've just did the triennial plan. If you remember, we had some goals. We had to shift those goals. If I have to shift a goal because I'm not able to do X, then that's going to be the two of us, the six of us discussing that.
Yeah, it just makes it hard to assess if, for me anyway, I don't know what the floor is. I don't know what the foundation. So when we're higher than foundation, it means nothing to me unless we know what the foundation. So I'm
Right.
looking for, where are we now? And then I know this is where we're going.
Yes.
But then I can say, this is the foundation, this is the floor. I know where we are now.
So right now, except for an MCAS score, that's the only foundation we have for reading, and I'm not sure that that's the score we should be using. I think it's one of them. I don't think it's the only one. I can easily get you those scores, right, and say, we're at 55% reading in grade 3 for all students. Our goal is 90, how do we get there, right? So that gives you the bottom, and this plan is initiated around how do we actually take all that we're learning, all of the resources, and putting them together to get us there to implement no later than 25. Because
where are we going? To me, anyway, I tend to be, if I can't touch it, it's not real. So I always look for foundation, and my background is engineering. So in order to measure success or failure, it would always indicate where we have a platform in which we're going to jump from.
Right.
And then we have a platform where hopefully we will land on. And this, for me, if we don't have that foundation, and special ed has it, but if we don't have it, it makes it impossible to assess
Can I
whether
jump in?
we've made any progress.
When you look at, I mean, the big goal here is the third goal, and that's the district improvement goal, and that is the primary function of the superintendent of schools. The first thing we're doing is actually setting teams for district standards and indicators
Yeah.
at the district level, and then conditions of school effectiveness with the principals with very specific indicators they're going to go after. That is to determine where we're at. So when you look at
So
the
we're
results
finding
of
the
that self-assessment,
well-
it's going to give you the status of the district in those 6 indicators. And once we know where that is, you're going to see the plan for progress built from there. So we're going back to, in the district standards and indicators is something we have experience with as a district, because we've used it for the foundation of school improvement planning since 2012.
Okay.
And the conditions for school effectiveness is something we ask our principals to do every year. We ask as a district, we're going to assign an indicator and ask every principal to do it so that we get feedback on where we're at in our buildings on a specific criteria. And then the principals can pick on where they think the most urgent need of their schools, which tells us the story as well. So this process will give you
The foundation.
the foundation,
Yeah.
and then we'll set the benchmark with the plan coming out of it.
So I want to go to the comment that you made that I have not forgotten, and that was the comment about, there's a lot of school systems with a lot of accolades. I haven't seen ours on that list. You mentioned that a few weeks ago, right? And I thought that was a comment. It's a comment I can't get out of my head, by the way, so thank you. In the way that we all know that there's all this public image stuff that's going on around any public school system. My job is to get us the real point of where we are and where do we want to go.
Okay, great.
So you'll get, hey, our readings, as we dive into this, we're going to be able to show all types of students in Stoughton Public Schools and where they are. So if we want to look at, middle school males, in comparison to females, we can. If we want to look at subgroups, we can. If we want to look at kids who are scoring, 99 on every test, we can do that if we want to. And I'm using ridiculous information, but my point is, we need a place for us to really take a look at to keep it, number one, so that we then can create the goals, to Jonathan's point, that it creates the benchmark.
Got it. Thank you, both of you. That was an excellent answer. We're
That was
building
him.
the benchmark, and then we're going from there.
I also want to go back to the two goals that Dr. Bennett was primarily focused on through conversations with the school committee chair to get us to this point, was that elementary literacy piece as well as the data piece. Both those goals support the third goal by consolidating data so we can get a better feel for where we're at, and we can do cross-correlation of the different data streams. And also in improving our ability to not just at the district level look at data, because we're all pretty good at looking at data here, but to empower everybody in the district to look at the data and then add their voice to the conversation. So, I mean, the first two goals are very strategic in terms of putting us in a position to get a better product out of the third goal.
I'd like to add one thing, too. I want to be really, really clear as I can be. I trust the people who work in this district with kids. I wake up every day trusting them. I clearly want them to do well, be successful for our kids, because if they're successful with our kids are successful, right? The most important people in the old saying in a school is the children. You've heard that quote before. I would actually argue that the most important people in the building are our teachers, because without those teachers, that's just an institution. It doesn't necessarily have goals, it doesn't move us, and all that. The second part, in my really philosophy of trusting our teachers, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be putting challenges in front of our educators to become better. And I don't know any educator who doesn't want to become better in their craft. And that's the requirement of the district, is to continuously move us forward, and there will be bumps in the road. We've been having a lot of these discussions in special education, EL, with the curriculum folks, for example. Like, are our curriculum specialists, supervisors, I believe is the title now, I hope to correct that in the future for the record, are they going into all classrooms? Specialized, general education, AP, you name it. Are we really going into these classrooms and taking a look at the curriculum and how we're seeing it? Because they're curriculum experts. They have that background, and they work through Jonathan's office, and it's, as you guys know, it's a very efficient place to be. Lastly, in trying to create this plan, I bring some years of experience on improving districts, and that's my purpose every day, is to improve the district. There will be glitches, as I call them, because there are things that I can't control, or there are things that I thought were going to be great and they didn't work. I think our job is to work together as a school committee and the superintendent to continuously drive the outcome, the student outcome. We have to continuously drive the student outcome. That's how we rate ourselves, is how do we improve those kids. Remember, this year's third grade scores, somebody can come and say, well, they were great scores, they were poor scores. Next year they say, well, the scores went down. Well, that's a whole different group of kids. What I want to do is, where are the fourth graders now? Did they continue to improve? And yes, if we went down, it could have been for a number of different reasons, including teaching and learning time, COVID, I mean, all these things, which I hope never comes back. But our job as a team is to drive improvement, and do it in a way where we can support staff. And sometimes those are difficult conversations. Most of the times there are a lot of aha moments. That's what I've learned in 15 years in this job, is the aha moments.
Excellent. One more thing.
Yes.
On page 2, can we give it at the 90% and make 100%?
We can.
And we should.
And we should. The reason why I put 90% is I used the research out of Washington State, which is about 10 or 12 years old now, of how what they looked at is, if we can get 90% of students reading by grade 3, the other 10% is what we're working on going forward. And we can really stress our time on learning. An example, the Washington study, and I'm happy to get you the book on it if you like it. It's very interesting data. What they basically said, and they noticed, if a student falls behind by grade 3, you need to double dose what they're getting. You need more time on task in order for students to improve. And that doesn't mean a pullout during their literacy block. It means push-in during literacy block and more time in literacy with literacy specialists, which, by the way, Stoughton Public Schools is doing, and a lot of districts aren't. The second is, you probably have been reading the Boston Globe recently around literacy, and we're not where we should be, and they've been grading the curriculum. DESE's been grading the curriculum. That's given a lot of negative public relations because some districts are using a curriculum it's fine, for another district it's not. So our goal here is to really figure out via this planning, here we are, we're going to show you where we are, and we're going to show you how the heck we get out of there and move forward. That's my goal. So, should we say 100%?
Yeah.
Sure. Can I tell you that I feel comfortable with that goal? No.
No one's ever comfortable with
However,
100%.
I don't mind a good challenge, and if I can take us from whatever number it is and get really close to that 100 number, then I guess it's on you to say I didn't meet the goal, or it's on you to say, wow, we really moved. One or the other.
Really
That's going to be your
moved.
decision.
Let's go to 100. From what the two of you have told me about creating this benchmark, we should be able to see the problem before the third grade and fix it by the time we're at the third grade. And perhaps when below 100% in the third grade, but when we get to third grade, we should concentrate on being at 100%. And then we can follow that on and perhaps even raise the standards as they proceed through the grades.
Yeah, and I will tell you, in response, I know this from working with families already, that having, for example, some of our retired teachers come in and work with the kids that are right on the cusp of getting over, right? So they're just a few months short of getting to that reading level. That type of targeted assistance has absolutely worked. You can see it in the data outcomes over time. Absolutely worked. And I can tell you most school systems don't do that,
Okay.
as an example.
Okay.
So I don't have a problem with moving it to 100 with the understanding that that should be the goal, but with the understanding that we got to give you a benchmark and then from there say, how do we get there?
I'm okay with the saying 90 to 100. That way we'll know if we're over 100.
I'm happy.
If we're over 90, we're doing very good.
Yes, I'm happy to put that in there.
Please.
Can I amend that to at least 90% instead of 90 to 100? Because the 90 to 100 is not a quantifiable
Yeah.
goal. You won't know if you've met it or not.
Understood. So we read population with the results at least 90 to 100% of students reading proficient by the end of grade 3.
At least
Just
90%.
at least 90, not 100, just at least.
So we don't want the 100 in there? That's
I
correct.
want the 100.
I know. All those in favor? All those opposed? At least 90% of students reading proficient by the end of grade 3.
Okay.
Good, Larry.
Twist and turn.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. I loved reading through this, believe it or not. I live for this kind of stuff. So kudos for all the work that went into just logistically figuring out the different steps and the timing to make this happen and make it feasible. I had a question about that at least 90% goal. It's the part of the long-term goal. Can you refresh my mind on what that time frame is for the long term? Are we talking about like within 5 years, 10,
So
20?
if we do this the right way, we get our benchmarks and we know where we are within the next 2 years, and we have a plan on how to get in the next decennial, triennial plan, that would be 3 years. So you're
Okay.
looking out 3. So it's a total encompassing of less than 5 years.
Okay, that's what I was.
We're already
looking
into
at. Okay.
into this year.
5-year, awesome. Something I didn't notice in goal 1, and maybe it was just implicit in one of the steps, was assessing any existing knowledge with the staff already, rather than assuming.
Yeah,
You
so
know.
to be quite honest, I take that for granted if our staff's involved.
Okay.
So it's not, we're not looking, we're looking to say, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in doing so. And then coming out with that, we know that the early screening now is taking place on a regular basis and multiple times. One of the things we haven't done yet is, okay, what does that look like as a benchmark for us right now?
Right.
It's not, wouldn't be part of our plan, but we're going to have to, and I think, Jonathan, you would agree with this, that we're going to have to Band-Aid some stuff along the way. We can't just wait. we're going to have to create it, benchmark it, but at the same time say, okay, we're able to do this, so let's do it and let's try it.
Fail forward.
Yes.
Big fan of that. Pilot, learn, and then adapt. Yeah. For the second goal, big data person, and anything around training on disaggregating data and how to leverage that to find not only where the strengths are, but where are the data leaks, not where are the program areas or problem areas, but what do we as instructors, what do we as, school or program administrators, what do we need to know and understand in order to really move the needle for us? What data points might be missing, and how might we collect them? And I'm also a big fan of democratization of data. A lot of times, the frontline staff are the ones that are collecting and reporting on the data, but it's the administrators who pull the reports and analyze it.
Yeah.
And there's a disconnect to frontline staff. They don't always understand. I think special ed is different because they see that in the regular meetings that they have with parents. They understand the importance of those data points, and they're very good at quantifying metrics. There's a lot that other teachers, I as an English teacher, have learned a lot from special education teachers around that. But what can we do to help staff connect with the data points? Because sometimes that might help address staff burnout and turnover because they don't understand how the metrics tie into. They teach from the heart. They're there for the mission. They're not there for the data, but it's the data that a lot of times will drive administrative decisions.
So that's the plan.
Okay. Awesome sauce.
Well spoken.
I think it's really core. I see more data discussions taking place in this district. I think the question is that it's going in multiple different directions, and we need to really collate that. I really appreciate your comments about disaggregating the data, because that's a huge point for me. It always has been. I used to work with a gentleman who, a secondary gentleman, he was a math teacher, and he used to do all my MCAS analysis, because he looked at it from what are we doing best and why? Whole different perspective, right? To look at data and say, why do we do so well in that in those type of geometry questions?
Right.
93% of the kids, subgroup blah blah blah, 79%. While so like everybody's like positive. Like why does that happen? Is it a certain lesson that we teach? Is it the timing of it? Is it because we do it repeatedly year after year after year within the curriculum? What was it? And the findings was very clear for him. For him, it was always, we do a lot of it all the time, especially starting in the middle grades into the high school grades in terms of that deep content. And second, timing. Remember, the kids take the test in March. If they have questions that are, or excuse me, April, May, the math test is in May. If you haven't gotten to a certain lesson by May, the answer is probably not going to be positive on the test because the kids haven't seen it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where you use the data to say how we need to shift our curriculum. I wouldn't just use MCAS data. I think that's a bad move. I'd use multiple sources of data.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we have to decide around data-driven decision-making is what is the Stoughton Public Schools data norms that we want to use.
Yeah. I love
So
the
we've
idea
talked
of
a lot about
establishing that.
attendance.
Yeah.
Right? Attendance is key. That is a huge issue for us. What does that mean in terms of outcomes? What's the impact?
Yeah.
How do we reach out to our families and really become partners? There's a lot of pressures on our parents. I'm not making excuses. There's a lot of pressure on adults and to try to do the right thing. How do we reach out and be partners in that?
If I could add something? And what I think you will find interesting is moving to the EduClimber software. It embeds within our data management system. It's a product of the company, of PowerSchool. But in having the conversation, all the different ebb and flow of information, all the information is available that's in PowerSchool, which is inclusive of like attendance and everything else. But we specifically like this program because it'll also interface with our SEL screener. So the FastBridge SEL screener's data will be able to pulled into the system, and that can then be cross-correlated with everything else. Now, I'm very interested to see how that supports things we're seeing or contradicts or how it all lines up, because that's never been a data point that we've had access to before.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was excited about that as well. I'm wondering, how might it connect with other data points and what might that look like?
That's going to be the most fascinating piece that comes out of this new software.
Yeah, that and AI. Goal 3, I just wanted to commend the leadership team around this. I love the building the teams from the ground up and having them centered as a voice in this as part of the assessment and the improvement planning. So I was just thrilled by the level of inclusion in that third goal.
Well, I can tell you this is the language coming from the guy from my left. He
So-
really helped with that because, I think there'll be a sense of overwhelmingness around this from some of our folks just because of experience or just because they haven't done it this way before. But I also feel like if I really encompass our time that we have together working on it, for example, the focus this summer at our leadership retreat will absolutely be grounded in some of this work, right? In terms of our professional development, grounded in this work. My goal is also to make sure that there's somebody in this district who wants to sit in this seat when I leave.
Right.
So driving leadership up, everybody should want the superintendent seat at some point. Well, hopefully they do.
Going on the record, says John.
But the key is if you post, you guys know this, if we post positions, we're not getting the candidates, and it's not a Stoughton issue. It's all over the place issue in terms of leadership. It's engulfed in an unfortunate situation of all of us who became educators who love what we do, get up every day saying, I can't wait to work with people and kids, and right now that just isn't that love out there. And we do need to create from within, and I have some other thoughts, by the way, about creating teacher leaders in the district that I'll bring to your attention at some point as well.
Can't wait for that. And I think your biggest challenge, obviously, is going to be time.
Yes.
And how to make the space for these conversations to happen in a collaborative and thoughtful manner, while making space for the 80 gazillion other things that are on there. It's hard to keep adding to. Something's going to have to come off, and that's going to be
The hardest thing for me as an educational leader in a district that has provided me some really good supports here in Stoughton so far is staying in the office. I just not my thing, and right now I don't feel, I can tell you, I just woke up this morning, I don't think I've spent as much time as I want to. I know I have more buildings, so I'm actually looking at restarting my entire schedule and starting every morning at a school, and at least, every 8 days everybody gets to see me, and if you can, it's because I'm out of district, not because I didn't want to do that. It's hard, but we do a pretty good job as a district. I think a very good job, not pretty good job, of administrators trying to get into the buildings. Yeah. I think we should do more. And my push with the staff is, with my colleagues, is always going to be do more of it, get out there, be seen. But anyways, it does require a vote of the school committee. I can do the amendments, and then you can sign off on the final one after my colleague has another question.
Yes.
I was going to ask if Fabian has a question.
Oh, Fabian?
Okay, go ahead. Come on, you can go to you.
It's aggressive. Yeah, I think it's a great plan.
Thank you.
I'd like to possibly add one thing to it.
Sure.
SEL. All the principal plans have the integration of SEL into an entire school, and we've heard it's a difficult thing to do. But I think it should be here, whether we decide we're going forward with it or not.
Right.
Because sometimes I wonder if SEL was just a overreaction to COVID. And I think someone has to be thinking about it and determine if it's going to fit into Stoughton School or not.
Yep.
Because I think it's taken already a lot of resources, time and thinking and trying to implement this. And the question is it something worth pursuing still, or is it being put in the back burner? And if it's here, I think it will, at least for me, it would still be in the forefront of something that.
So in goal number 3, where you're looking at the section on page 8,
Yeah.
curriculum instruction. That would be a specific area where we would be looking at SEL. Okay? So you could also say that could be literacy, because we're doing that as a separate, but it'd be embedded there, and I'll defer.
So we also, I mean, in our triennial plan, one of the 3 goals is SEL goal. So it's a huge primary focus of the district right now. So I don't know if it'd be necessary to add that to the superintendent's goals when we have clearly defined goals for the whole school district. And for instance, all the professional development this year across the entire school district is focused on SEL.
Yep.
We have components of that team looking at even like the EduClimber piece to bring it online and integrate in like the SEL screener. I mean, it's already defined for this year and for next year.
Yep.
I think the question for us is how that impacts the confluence of these other goals going to the next triennial plan.
Right.
And, I mean, we have these 3 pieces. We also have the 3 pieces of our current triennial plan. There's actually 6 pieces at play right now that are all feeding in and will be encompassed in this 3rd goal of Dr. Baeta. So that's going to pull it all together. So when we finish up next year, and probably before then, we'll have a very good idea what the next 3 years are going to look like in terms of bringing the district forward, integrating the SEL, the early elementary literacy. You know, ELE is never going to go away, at least not in the foreseeable future in terms of a discrete plan. So how do all these things interconnect, and how do we as a district choose to bring them forward once we get through the next 2 years?
Yeah, when I read through this, in trying to, for example, getting the kids up to proper reading level by the 3rd grade, and also it speaks about differentiating and so on. So I thought for the kids that have fallen behind, it may give us a way of starting to implement SEL and see if it actually helps. I know from what I understand, it's a hard thing to just put in the current curriculum, but we're now designing a curriculum for kids that are falling behind so they can catch up. And I see that it's perhaps an opportunity where we can get some of the training of SEL into place and sort of fit that in, and then perhaps it will creep into the entire curriculum over time.
That's happening right now.
Oh, great.
So, absolutely.
Fantastic.
I think one of the things we are really doing a good job of is we're trying to find the right path for that continuous improvement of SEL. You made a comment earlier about, you know, I would argue my previous district was working on SEL before COVID.
Okay.
We weren't reacting to COVID. We were already working on it because it was a fundamental decision of the school committee, the curriculum office, my office, and my teachers that social emotional learning needed to be part, because they were seeing certain things in classrooms that they were like, okay, we need to have some, you know, are we ready for learning today? And that became the focus. I think I provided some comments the last time around. We had 5 working committees on professional development, on guidance, on what does it mean in 1st grade when we're talking about responsibility versus 12th grade, those types of things. That's what we were working on as I was switching here. So I think you'll see some of that stuff, if you will, in our plan going forward, because I don't think SEL is going away.
Okay.
So just so you know, while we were dealing with SEL explicitly, the primary focus just before the pandemic hit for us was trauma-informed classrooms.
Yeah.
And trauma-informed schools, which I'm going to say is, you know, it could be a semantics in terms of what you're looking at, SEL, trauma, because they go hand in hand.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
We do need to vote on this, but I wanted to thank you for responding, especially to the literacy question that came actually from a conversation when Dr. Baeta mentioned at our last meeting that we didn't have a literacy goal in this district. The very next day, I had a conversation with a huge group of parents who were very concerned, elementary school parents, about this very thing, who said, my child has reached 3rd grade, they're behind. Or I know my child's struggling, I don't know how to get help. My child doesn't have an IEP, or my child is not ELE, I don't know how to get them help. Or, you know, I didn't realize my child was this far behind. I've had parents say, though, they stopped doing reading assessments. And just, you know, like, oh, they stopped doing them years ago, or they stopped doing them last year, or parents not being able to see it. So I really appreciate, you know, a response to that and bringing this forward, because I really think it's very important.
And I think one of the deep conversations, not for tonight, but something we need to talk about our homework policy and the concept of time. I don't think time should be in a policy. We should provide our educators really clear plans of our expectations of homework are, but the idea that it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on the grade level, but AP is excused from all of that. I wouldn't have learned English if it wasn't for constant attention to reading. I wouldn't. And writing is not my thing. I'm not the superintendent writer. I would actually say Jonathan is 20 times better than I am. I'm not. I'm a good communicator. I love to read, but I have a lot of concerns around that, and I do want to take that issue up with you at some point as a way to really get us focused on what is homework in our district, and not it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
What is the, what is?
The purpose?
What's the problem you're trying to solve for, and why is homework the right vehicle to solve it?
Right. And how do we do it, and how do we make sure that we hold people accountable, that we're not going to do 70 pages of reading in one night because it's the right thing to do for a college prep class. That's not, and I want my teachers to have that freedom on behalf of the administration to be able to do it. And I am willing to have that difficult discussion, just solely around, not because what's in place is not something that I think maybe has some difficult discussions about, but if you can't have, thank you for using the word, aggressive plan to improve without also having that discussion.
That's discussion for later time. So.
Yes, later time.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair,
This
for
one.
allowing me to yap about it.
So we need a motion to approve the goals as
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve the superintendent goals as amended.
Sure. All right, so that motion was made by Chris. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll do Fabian. Motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, the motion is carried 5-0.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll get you a clean copy with those amendments and anything else, and then we can sign it. We can backdate it to today since the vote was today.
Sounds
Thank you.
good. All right.
Thank you all.
All right, we had some warrants for today. Do I have a motion to approve the warrants? I believe we all signed them.
Motion to approve the warrants.
All right, that motion was made by Lindsay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion was seconded by Armando. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, the warrants have been approved, 5-0. Moving on to the acceptance of the minutes from September 26, 2023. This time I'd like to ask for any amendments or corrections to the minutes. Yes.
7 o'clock on the top.
Oh, yes. I think that was because that's how we've done it, but I will look into that.
Okay.
Chair, I had a few recommendations for clarity.
Sure.
At the top of page 3, first paragraph, last sentence, and Dr. Bayo, let me know if I'm putting words in your mouth that were not intended, but Dr. Joseph Bayo reminded the community that this plan was created, it says for Stoughton students. I would like to amend that to say created to address or created for existing student populations, and it's not in response. It
That's
just
fine.
seemed a little unclear.
Okay.
And I have these written down. And at the bottom of that page, last paragraph, mid-paragraph, he is seeking a 2-year plan that will, it says, consist of his leadership team. I don't think the plan will consist of his leadership team, but will include his leadership team. 2 more. Top paragraph, mid, where Ms. Christine Shannon suggested surveying the teachers while they are still active in the community, not so active in the community, but still actively employed with Stoughton Public Schools.
All right, and this is on page 4. I'm just giving a note for our.
Yes, sorry about that. And then finally, when you're ready.
Okay.
Same page, under the Wellness Policy Committee, last sentence of that paragraph. I just asked that after Mr. Joseph, I suggested asking parents to write a letter of interest to the superintendent. I would put a semicolon after that, strike the and. And then Ms. Chris Shannon suggested school principals, I would strike could, and then nominate parents and then the school committee, and then the rest as it, just for clarity. And that's it then.
All right. I'll make sure that our recording secretary gets those, that. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes, or anybody else have any amendments or corrections?
Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
A motion to approve.
Seconded.
All right, so that was, motion was made by Lindsay, seconded by Chris. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so the motion is carried 4-0 with Fabian abstaining because she was absent. And now we're moving on to the old business, the elementary school building project update and responsibilities. This is actually exciting. We presented the project to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, the MSBA's Facility Assessment Subcommittee, the FAS, on September 27th. We were very well prepared thanks to our project team, especially DRA and Vertex, and we were very well presented. Dr. Bayetta, Ms. Monahan, I want to also thank Mr. Dorr, who came in with a couple key answers, and Ms. Courtney Southwick from DRA. We had very positive feedback from the board, which was a very pleasant surprise. We had very few questions, so that was very exciting. I know I used very a lot there, but it was a great presentation. Our next step is the MSBA board vote on October 25th. Dr. Brad, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about the presentation.
Perfect. Yeah, it was, been to a lot of those. We were very prepared.
Yes, it was fantastic.
Thank you to the team, the professionals that said, watch for this, watch for that, and we were able to address it before the question came up.
I also like to thank Mr. Joseph Buckley, who is the vice chair of the school committee. He was a former MSBA employee, and just having him on the team changed the tenor. Everybody knew if you've got Mr. Joe Buckley on your team, you're going to know what to do. You're very well prepared. So I hope that gives everybody confidence that we are doing exactly what we should be. Quick day recap from Stoughton Day. Ms. Courtney Southwick and I and Bob the Skeleton had sat at the table for Stoughton Day with boards and flyers, and want to thank everybody who stopped by with feedbacks and questions. Most of the families that we talked to were aware of the project, but not really sure of the details, the timeline. Most of them said, wait, there's a community vote. Isn't this done already? Those who didn't have children were much more concerned about the scope of the project, the cost. So we're keeping that in mind as we do outreach, especially over the next few months. There will be more community forums, especially after the new year when we have more financial detail. But this fall, we're thinking about focusing on informational videos for SMAC and really push kind of the cable and have maybe short snippets that people can watch on YouTube in the pickup line. The next building committee meeting is tomorrow, Wednesday, October 11th at 7 p.m. here in the conference room at the district offices. Anything else to add? I think that's it. So we're moving right along. We're kind of in a holding pattern until the board vote, but we have our fingers crossed for that. Moving on to other matters. At this point, I would like Lindsay Kreckler, other member of the Pilgrim Area Collaborative, for an update from them.
Yeah, so I am Stoughton's representative on the Pilgrim Area Collaborative Board because we are a member district. So we had our first meeting after summer vacation last Thursday, so just excited. It's like a super short update, just excited to share like back to school is going really well. Enrollment is steady, with a waiting list, meaning that because the collaborative is tuition based, financials are in a good place, and personnel like hiring went really well for the new school year. They're excited about the team they have in place for the school year, and they're actually in a position where they're exploring some options for expansion, hopefully to take some pressure off of the wait list and also just to allow for more space to better support students who are coming in with higher support needs. So yeah, if folks have questions, please let me know because I probably don't have the answers, but I'm happy to find them, would easily be able to get them. So yeah, just off to a good start with the pack this year.
Good. All right, any other correspondence or other matters? I did want to mention that our wellness committee appointments will be next time, so there's a reason we're still collecting those appointments. And then next meeting will be our budget draft. So budget season is upon us. brew your coffee. I know Ms. Perkins is going to be working hard for that. So our next meeting will be, we will have a meeting we've added to the schedule for November 7th to discuss that budget draft. We will review it on the 21st of November and have a public hearing on the 12th of December. So just so people know, we will be coming forward with that budget. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn? All right, motion made by Chris, a second? Second by Fabian. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the motion is carried 5-0. The meeting is adjourned at, was it 9:51? 8:51. All right, thank you all, and good night.
Sorry.